Hello, viewers of the Indian Express. Last night, that's on Friday afternoon in the United States, appeared to be a political debacle for the Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy, who had gone to the White House hoping to play a trump card with Trump when it came to a minerals deal with Ukraine and, of course, to talk peace in terms of the Russia-Ukraine war. But what happened last night is splashed across newspapers, across television screens, and on social media. There was a verbal dressing down in the Oval Office last night. Joining us today is Shubhajit Roy, the diplomatic editor of the Indian Express, to talk about what all happened and what will be the ramifications of this showdown between Zelensky and Trump. Shubhajit, welcome to the show. Welcome to the Indian Express YouTube. Starting off, it was a debacle. It was the verbal spat, the fiery exchange between Trump and Zelensky, and for this to be televised in the middle of the American press, what are your comments and thoughts on it?
Well, you're absolutely right. With cameras rolling, US President Donald Trump and Vice President J.D. Vance's public showdown in the Oval Office with Ukraine President Volodymyr Zelensky was something that, every world leader's worst nightmare came true in those 50 minutes or so, of which of the last 10, 11 minutes was where there was a very fiery, testy, volatile, undiplomatic exchange that I have not seen in the last 2 decades of covering diplomacy. Essentially, what triggered the conversation was that Zelensky, who was already under tremendous pressure, he walked into the White House as a leader, leading his country in a war for 3 years, where his chief backer, US, has now started playing with the rival Russians. And he knew the high stakes involved in the bilateral meeting at the White House, where he was going
Absolutely.
to sign the minerals deal, but in exchange for security guarantees. But Trump was clearly not ready to give him that till the deal was signed. And normally these are scripted press interaction between White House pool media and the visiting leaders, as we saw in the earlier, as well when Prime Minister Modi was there in Oval Office, where there's a group of about 10 TV, print, and wire agencies who ask questions, and the leaders answer those questions. But I think the exchange got really, testy after U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance. He sort of interjected and talked about diplomacy, which sort of riled Zelensky in responding to the fact that how U.S. Where was U.S. and where were the others when Crimea was annexed by Russia in 2014. And that sort of led to a series of back and forth comments where the two sides sort of held their ground. Vice President Vance, he sort of pushed back, saying that you have not said thank you to the U.S. president. President Trump also jumped into that. So, and it was sort of a very undiplomatic. What usually happens, these kind of conversations are quite normal behind closed doors, inside rooms
Exactly.
where such diplomatic talks take place. But it's the first time it happened when it happened in public. Knowing Trump, every world leader has had a method to deal with his sort of behavior or his statements. And each world leader, whether Prime Minister Modi or Jordan King Abdullah or President Macron from France, they've all dealt with those situations in different ways, but tactfully and not irking President Trump. But I think Zelensky was under too much pressure, and also he had to stand his ground at a time when his country was in war, and he could see that world was watching this sort of televised performance of a debate, sort of a performance as White House cameras rolled. So I think this was sort of very, very, something that unprecedented, unusual White House exchange that we saw last night. And we'll see where does this go from here.
Absolutely. Shubhajit, do you think that somewhere Zelensky would have expected, like, obviously he was not expecting for this kind of a dressing down, But like you said, that,
I won't call it a dressing down, Flora. That's a uncharacteristic sort of term to use for Zelensky. But I think it was a very fiery exchange because he was not tactful, and at that point he stood his ground. He responded, which irked Vance and Trump, and that I think that triggered those moments of exchange where the and you have to understand that Trump is sort of is not an usual leader. He you cannot associate him with any of the global norms that are associated with the behavior of a world leader. His comments, his posts, his behavior run counter to those norms. So every world leader who walks into the Oval Office knows that and sort of plays that. So they have to bite their lips and swallow their pride. And that happened with Jordan's King Abdullah. When Trump talked about his Gaza plan, the Jordanian king did not say anything and did not contradict the US president in front of the TV crews because Trump doesn't want to be disrespected in front of his domestic audience. So, but Jordan King, after he left the meeting, he did issue a statement via a tweet rejecting the Gaza plan after he got out of the White House. So there are ways. Similarly, when Emmanuel Macron, when he was there in the White House, he was skillful and respectful to Trump and politely corrected Trump about Europe's contribution to the Ukrainian war effort. So there were ways in which each leader tackled Trump, and that we saw in the last 1 month. And Zelensky obviously was emotional, was under pressure. So I think he did not play tact as part of his toolkit as a leader while confronting Trump.
Uh-huh. So there were no lunches, there were no dinners, and there was no press conference that generally follows a bilateral talk in the White House. How do you see this playing out in the bigger picture? What happens to the minerals deal now, Shubhajit, and what happens to the Russia-Ukraine war peace talks?
Well, I think the mineral deal is right now, for the time being, it's off. We saw that just after this testy, fiery exchange, Zelensky left White House. He went back, and although he thanked President Trump in a tweet, and President Trump has sort of said that he can come back when he's ready for peace. But I think right now, what the world will be watching is that the world is now divided. The Europeans, the G7 countries, many of them have expressed support for Zelensky. Similarly, the White House has lined up the entire cabinet, which is a loyalist pick of President Trump, as well as American congressmen to support President Trump and Vice President Vance. And I think the issue here is that everyone understands that there has been a collapse of trust, and diplomacy classically is done behind closed door. And that's the real value of diplomacy, that it's about talks and dialogues within the room and not a spectacle for the cameras. This would mean that back-channel talks now have much more value than public statements and posturing. I think that is the key takeaway from this particular episode. And India also has not expressed any opinion, and it's unlikely it will get into the debate between the two sides. And because it has always maintained its position that dialogue and diplomacy is the only path forward. In fact, just a day before, they reminded that on Friday, Modi and European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen, they agreed that they're for just and lasting peace. And that's a demand put forth by Zelensky. So the world is watching very closely, because if America doesn't give support to Ukraine, it is going to be cakewalk for Russia. And that is something Europe and Ukraine would not want to happen.
Absolutely. And before I let you go, I'm talking about Russia. How do you think Vladimir Putin is watching now? Is he sitting pretty? Is this a very good signal to him?
I don't know what is he doing, but I know that he's the biggest beneficiary of the current showdown. Russia and its President Vladimir Putin. As someone told me that I think Putin couldn't be happier. They are drinking vodka straight out of the bottle in the Kremlin tonight. This was the outcome that Moscow would be happy about, a break of trust and partnership between Zelensky and the US. But everyone would be also looking at Ukraine. And this is a question where both Ukrainians and Americans will have to come back to the table, or else Ukraine fully knows that it cannot fight the battle without American support. That might mean Ukraine has to come back to Trump, as anyone in Zelenskyy's place will have to value his country's interests, lives, more than winning a public televised debate. And here, I think when heads are cooler, calmer, people will look things clearly and look at the way forward.
Absolutely, Shubhajit. All eyes are now on Ukraine, definitely. It remains to be seen if Volodymyr Zelensky comes back to the table, but as you rightly pointed out, and he also mentioned in his follow-up interview with Fox News later in the day that he was not going to apologize to Trump, but obviously they cannot fight the war, or they cannot talk peace talks without the United States of America and Trump, of course. That was Shubhajit Roy with his views on what happened in the White House and what's at stake right now in the Russia-Ukraine war. Thank you for watching us, viewers. You were watching this conversation on the official YouTube channel of the Indian Express.